Hello, everybody. Sorry for those of you who missed us on Tuesday, but today, Thursday, February 1st, we bring you episode 76 of Block Digest on block height 507,133 with Mr. Rick.
Hey, everybody. Yeah, sorry about that delay. Hope y'all's Thursday's going well.
A Wookie.
Hey, guys. How's it going?
And Janine.
Hey.
And me, a pair of green numbers. I mean, Shinobi Monkey.
Those are letters, man. Those are letters. I guess there's some numbers on there, but if you're gonna say a pair, it's letters.
But it's the pairs of numbers that they come in lines. I don't know.
That's a pair of pairs, dude. There's no recovery.
I'm not a morning person. Okay. I'm still getting used to
this. No, good way to start the show.
But I guess for the first thing for the day, David Harding, the master of Bitcoin documentation, threw together something on saving money on fees. And just a quick disclaimer before Janine takes over. This is more catered towards developers and kind of at a technical level, but I do believe Dave is planning on publishing something more user-centric to kind of help people just figure out how to use their specific wallets. So I guess with that caveat, you want to take it away, Janine?
Yeah, so the document is pretty simple. It's just a couple of categories of things that Bitcoin services or cryptocurrency services using Bitcoin could do in order to make fees a lot smaller, especially the ones that are spending most of their time complaining about fees on Twitter, So one of the first ones, which most people probably won't be familiar with, is compressed public keys. And the reason most people won't be familiar with it is because we've been using compressed public keys for a really long time, since 2012. But there's many wallets who have still not adopted it. I probably should have, it would have been interesting to look into which wallets actually implement all of these things, but maybe that's something we can go over in the future with David. It would be nice to have him on to maybe go over that, because he did say he was going to make a user, another kind of article, which was intended to be read by users to make fees cheaper. So hopefully he's still working on that, but maybe we can also go over this with him. So beyond compressed public keys, there's also payment batching, which is something we've kind of heard a little bit about from him recently. He wrote an entire article about how you can save 80% on fees if you implement payment batching, which is basically send a single transaction with like multiple payments in one transaction. And then there's also using SegWit, obviously, because one of the benefits of SegWit is you get a fee discount because the data is a lot smaller. That was one of the benefits of SegWit. And also your change when you do transactions, and obviously consolidation, which is something we've also heard a lot about with regards to Coinbase, because Coinbase has not been doing that until recently. But I think I heard, did they end up taking advantage of the low fees to consolidate their outputs recently? I think there was rumors about that, but I don't know if it was ever confirmed.
Yeah, they better have.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw the same rumors, but I didn't see anything confirmed either.
Yeah. And then there's a whole section on how to implement smart fee estimation algorithms. And how, because that's one of the things most people don't understand, is that technically you can use any fee you want. The fees, if you're using a good wallet, you should be able to choose the fee yourself, and it should be able to tell you based on an estimate how long it will take for that transaction to confirm with that fee. And it should also give you options that if you're willing to delay, if your transaction isn't urgent, you should be able to delay it by having a lower fee if it's not an urgent transaction. So that's, I think he has a section where he says if you want to wait 2 hours, like there's a different table of based on how long you're willing to wait and how much you could save on transaction fees if you're willing to wait that long. So if your transaction isn't urgent, if you can implement a lower fee and save a lot of money, even though it might take up to 4 days to complete. Now, this might not be such a big problem anymore because we've seen, I think we mentioned on our last show, the fees have really gone down recently to the point where there's people getting transactions with 2 Satoshis per byte confirmed. But obviously, you could still do this stuff just to be more efficient. And if fees do go back up, you can do some of this stuff in order to not pay very high fees.
Mm-hmm. And obviously, the one solution not mentioned on here is crash the Bitcoin price. Hey, everybody, fees are getting even cheaper.
Yeah, right. I'm just looking to see, like, I sent some dust to a donation address just to see, like, with 5 Satoshis a byte last night. And yeah, it's already got 57 confirmations and it's already done. So yeah, it's great to see these low fees again, and kind of just being able to send Bitcoin around. And I love this because, a lot of developers out there, I'm sure they all go to the same avenues of approach when it comes to trying to develop on Bitcoin. Like everybody goes to try and make a wallet and see, what they could do differently if just user interface. And if just to, get that information out there to where these developers who are coming into the space, they have this resource where they could go and look into how they set up their wallet to make it the most efficient thing. This can really help bring in all that business we were talking about competing with Coinbase. These developers, they have access to that information. They create these systems quicker, and it's all good for the ecosystem. That's an awesome job.
Yeah, I think the doc is awesome. I think it's really helpful. But I think it's also important to remember that this whole fee problem was artificially created in the first place. We don't have that many people actually using Bitcoin in day-to-day transactions yet for the block size to be totally consumed. And the reason that it's been totally consumed is from spam attacks. And the reason that spam attacks are cost effective is that the fees aren't high enough yet. So we did have the spam attacks stop. They actually stopped before the Bitcoin price made big movements. At least that's the way I'm recalling the timeline. And even with the price movement, right, we just don't have a ton of nasty, dusty transactions being stuffed through the blocks right now. So the spam attack definitely had a big deal, or had a big impact. And just to try to get ahead of the attacks, what I want to call out is that I think that the next narrative will be that Bitcoin is broken, or at least it opens up a narrative that Bitcoin is broken because it doesn't have a fee market that's going to actually support it. But Bitcoin Cash or some of these other scam coins, they're still, quote, secure, right? Which is laughable, but they've said stupider things, right? This is what I'd be saying next if I was them. Because they don't support Lightning, so they're going to have those transactions happen on block, and so they're going to have a fee market develop. The reality is, we're going to be fine, right? We still have a ton of money coming out of the block rewards. And then the other thing that I just kind of want to try to inoculate everybody that's listening against is the possibility that we're going to see a lot of miners go out of business right now because the spam attacks pushed a lot of false signals to entrepreneurs, telling them that there was a lot more money per block than there actually was, because a lot of what was going on was people were spamming the blockchain and then taking those fees back themselves. So if you were a potential miner and you were looking at how much you were going to get per block and how much electricity you're going to have to invest, your numbers are completely messed up right now for 2 reasons. One is that the Bitcoin price changed quite a bit, so the block reward is much lower. And the other is that the fees were artificially inflated. So what we should expect to see from that is kind of a boom bust cycle with the miners. And maybe we won't, but if we see the hash rate drop drastically, we shouldn't freak out. It's normal when people are deceived into over-investing. And it's not going to drop to the point where we have any competitors that are anywhere close to providing the same level of security that Bitcoin provides. So keep that in mind. I don't know if it's going to play out like that, but these are some of the things that probably will, if not attempted now, could be attempted in the future. So it's just good to know about the potential.
Yeah, and I also want to point out, if you look at the mempool recently, you can see there's still a chunk of people who are spending way too much on fees, or at least more than would be necessary. You know, maybe they want to spend that much fee just to, you know, give their transaction the best chance possible. That's completely fair. But you should notice that if you're spending, I'd say, more than 10 Satoshis per byte, 10 Satoshis per byte at the moment looks to be like an okay amount to be sending, 10 to 20 maybe. But if you're sending like 100 Satoshis per byte, you're overpaying for the fees based on the market. And actually, Shinobi, if you can zoom out to 30 days, the 30-day chart, if you go to the top. Yeah, 30-day. I just want to show it because I clicked on the 30-day a few minutes ago, and like, look at that. Look at that mountain that came down. Look at the crazy colors. And now it's like, oh, everyone's using basically 5 Satoshis per byte. Awesome.
And I mean, yeah, to kind of jump back real quick to what JW was saying about miners. One thing I kind of wanted to bring up regarding the current price is this graphic is something published by MarketWatch, I think like 4 or 5 months ago. And this is pretty much a breakdown of how much it costs to mine 1 Bitcoin at the time in each of the different states in the US based on electricity prices. And since this chart was put together, the hash rate has roughly doubled. So these numbers are going to be about twice what they are in this graphic. And if you look at this, a lot of these states would technically be non-profitable if there are large mining operations. So at the kind of price point we're at right now, this is really pushing into the point where miners are at cost or very close to that. And that's definitely something, if this does turn into a proper bear slump for a while, this is going to have resounding implications for the entire mining ecosystem.
Yeah, so just to describe the graphic, you just had a map of the US there, and it showed the electricity cost per state, or average cost per megawatt or something like that. And a lot of them wouldn't be profitable to have mines set up, but there are people that have mines set up, and they're setting up more mines. So just for anybody that's listening and not watching, but yeah, I think that's totally valid, and it's important to know that this is the sort of stuff that always happens when you have kind of a big incumbent. You know, if you're selling benzene or something in your Dow Chemical and you've got 90% of the market, it's just really tempting to try to throw your weight around and really beat the hell out of the little guys, right? So if you can make them overinvest and you don't overinvest because you know that you're manipulating the market, then they'll make some mistakes and overinvest. Or if you can do things to kind of hide the amount of profitability that's actually in play by setting up expenses that are to other companies, right? All these games are normal and typical of a big incumbent player. We know that we've had one in mining. But it's also important to know from an economic standpoint that they're just cutting their own throat, right? That actually doesn't work. We know from economic science that they will suffer in the long run, even in the medium term, for doing that. But you have to let dumb money work its way out of the system. And so if we do see hash rate drop to half, that's okay, because the half that remains are the people that were smart enough to go, this is a volatile market. I want to make sure that I'm being wise in my investments, and I'm not going to trust, you know, a huge incumbent player to push things around. So, so we don't have to freak out. It's normal. I don't know that it's going to happen, but if it does, it wouldn't be unexpected. And you know, it's fine. And that's Jihan and those guys getting poorer too, right? They're spending their ammo and they're getting poorer in the process, and we just have to let that happen.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
we were also talking about. Oh, sorry, I was just gonna say, like on that graphic, the average price was like 35 to 4,000. So I guess like the price of cost for mining now would be about somewhere between I guess 7,000 and 9,000. Yeah, I mean, like, it's an interesting graphic, and I'm curious, like, I guess that's just pulling straight from the grid. I'm curious to just see, like, I wonder who's out there mining with some renewables attached to it, and like how that exactly is helping all that, or like if that graph factors that sort of stuff in already. But either which way, it's an interesting way to look at that and the price, and we've seen it drip below 10, and yeah, I mean, it's right up there about the cost of mining, I guess.
Yeah, and mining is just it's kind of a super competitive zero-sum game, right? So I wouldn't be in the business in the first place, but your profits are going to be driven to zero by that difficulty investment.
Yeah, and I also wanted to point out, like, one of our stories today is going to be about KodakCoin, and as it turns out, that miner that we thought might have been a scam. Sorry, there's an ambulance going by.
I'm gonna get
that. That I don't know if I might have to turn this off just a second.
That's right, Janine.
Yeah,
they're coming
right
for
there
you.
at the doorstep. Watch
out. Yeah, so that whole miner that we thought might have been a scam, that they were using Kodak's name. It turns out it was actually Kodak who had partnered with a mining manufacturer that looked like they basically just ripped off the Antminer S9. And one of the things that came with it was this paper saying how much money you'll earn. And obviously that was immediately pointed out that they completely misunderstood how mining as a business works, and that you can't, like, the prices aren't static. They don't stay the same very long. When the hash rate, like, I think Safety said it was increasing by 15% average. So yeah, that shows that they don't really understand crypto economics.
Mm-hmm. And I guess a little slide over to the next story. This is a pretty cool demonstration from somebody who does understand how the economics of this space works. This is a test with a Coinfinity ATM integrating Lightning Network. So we're about to watch this guy scan his Lightning address on his wallet, insert money, and have the ATM deliver his Bitcoin over Lightning Network. So how fucking cool is that?
I imagine they're gonna save some money, doing that, setting that sort of mechanics up to where they're paying low fees. And yeah, this is what we're talking about. These new guys who are first to the market with this tech really stand to make a place in this market. So yeah, it's great to see this tech being implemented in various ways. And yeah, I like that video. You walk up to an ATM, you just press it, and just as quick as that, you get your Bitcoin through the Lightning channel. It's getting Bitcoin through an ATM was always a pretty neat little experience, but just knowing that it's running through that Lightning channel, and yeah, it just sort of makes it that much cooler.
Totally. Yeah.
Yes,
I mean, I was just going to say all the angst over price. Like, if you're a technologist, you don't really care because you understand price is just a reflection of the average dumb idiot understanding how great things are, and that is a very volatile and weird process to watch, right? And so when I see stuff like Lightning coming out, I'm like, I would love to be an angel investor at this stage of a new technology, because it's pre-first application. Right? You can argue that maybe the store of value was an application, but for basically 90% of the wealth in the world, that wasn't really that big of a focus, because we think that the dollar is relatively stable. So yeah, it's an application, and there's people like me that don't trust the dollar, but we're all kind of weirdos, right? This is the first time that that Bitcoin can do something that is hugely, hugely impactful, and it's just getting turned on right now. So if the price dropped by half, that just means people are stupid, but they'll figure it out over the next 6 to 12 to 18 months, and then it'll skyrocket.
Yeah, so if anyone wants to check out the ATM, it's apparently located in Graz, Austria, in southeastern Austria. So I guess if you're in Austria and you want to try out Lightning Network enabled ATM, that's where it is.
Need to get over there one day.
Coming to a city near you soon.
There we go. And I guess the next little piece of news is a blast from the past. Look who's mining half-empty blocks again. Oh golly gee. What's that, AntPool?
Blocks.
Did I say the spam attack was over? I'm sorry. No. Take that back.
I mean, but like if you look at like some of the timing between this, like this is ridiculous. Like this block, there's 3 minutes between the previous one, like 7 minutes. Like that is plenty of time for their software to validate a block and know what they can include in the next one. So like at this point, like this is ridiculous.
Yeah,
this
I think
a perfect example of what I was talking about, right? Because they're missing out on those fees and artificially inflate the price.
Yeah, I think they were saying the reason this was happening was because AntPool and also F2Pool. I don't see F2Pool mining empty blocks there or half empty ones, but the reason it was happening was because apparently they had a floor for how many Satoshis per byte a transaction had to pay to get included in the block. And obviously, because now transactions are paying super low fees, they were like, oh, these transactions don't exist. We'll just mine the ones that are paying all the high fees. And then they include those in the block. And the block ends up being half empty because everyone's using low fees. I think that was the reason they were saying that was happening.
Yeah, but I mean, that's kind of nonsensical. I mean, if you have the space and your software has had the time to validate what was included in the last one or not, like it's more money. Like, why not? Like at this point with the fiber network and like the faster relay between miners, like there really is no excuse to not be packing those blocks full.
Yeah, honestly, when I see this sort of thing, I think about these miners like just testing out new sort of ways to figure out efficiencies with like making sure that they're getting just the highest Satoshis or byte. Like, I don't know. I always imagine these guys are really testing out new ways to like mine every now and again. And, you know, I don't know, like the mining side of the equation, I have never really played that game, but it's definitely something, you know, just to see these half full blocks again. It's like, oh man, what the hell? But you know, this is the network, and you know, eventually this will just become something just where you're going to go out of business if you're doing this, because everybody else will start moving towards these other systems.
Well, what I think is funny is that even when we're having half empty blocks, most of them are still bigger than the average Bitcoin Cash block. So
yeah, that's bad.
And none of those transactions are real. So
yeah, they're still struggling to get past Dogecoin's transaction throughput on average.
Oh my gosh. You know you're in trouble when you're competing with a coin that was literally created to make fun of the whole concept of cryptocurrency.
Much transaction throughput. Wow.
And this next thing, I'm sure by this point everybody is aware of this, but the recent publication from the National Institute of Standards and Technology declaring that technically Bitcoin is a fork and Bitcoin Cash is the original blockchain. And yeah, this is just beyond silly. And
yeah. I'm sorry. It's like the National Institute of Standards and Technology. Come on, guys. Like, where's the standards?
And the ridiculous part is, if you look in another section of the document, they actually explicitly spelled out the technical differences between a soft fork and a hard fork, and then went on to write this section when they clearly understood the difference between the two because they delineated them in a previous section. And for those who think that this is the only technical error, no. I haven't had a chance to actually read through the entire document yet. It's something like 60 pages. But even with their revisions and in some other sections, there has been a lot of other incorrect statements, such as SegWit compressing things or requiring the validation of less data. So I would say anybody out there who has the time and would want to actually dig through and try to find any other technical errors in the paper, please do. If you follow the link here, there's actually the email address to write in with any comments, and it's not closing until the end of February. So if you got any spare time to help help them pull their heads out of their ass, pretty sure the community would appreciate it.
Yeah, I think I saw something after that where enough people did comment about how bad that was written about Bitcoin Cash being the original blockchain and Bitcoin being the hard fork. Like that, I think that might have been edited since. I'm not entirely sure, but I remember seeing something on Twitter about them saying, you know, they were sorry about that, and they do, you know, hope that people will look at it and help them with this process, because if the, you know, it is good to see like some people like this National Institute of Standards and Technology, which is just a, you know, an authority, but it's like one of those authorities that people take seriously from the legacy markets and everything. It's good to see them taking it, you know, at least like trying to approach it. It's upsetting to see them like have such a misunderstanding. But like you're saying, you know, if you're out there, you know, you got the time, read it, help them out with it, send them an email. Maybe they'll start editing it and getting it something to where it really does sort of show a standard in Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. But yeah, for right now, I also haven't had the time to read it just yet because I've been running through all this other stuff. But as soon as I do get the chance, I will.
Yeah, so just wanted to point out that some people who have been emailing NIST, they have gotten responses back, and this is apparently the current revised version that I don't think they've published it or like actually republished the original document with this revised paragraph yet. But this is probably what they're going to have after maybe some more people write in. My favorite part, of course, was that initially, as you saw in the paper on screen, it said Bitcoin Cash had the ticker BCC, which is actually the ticker for BitConnect, which just got destroyed recently. I like that BitConnect is the original Bitcoin. But I think
that was painful.
And now the revised version, it says BCH or BCC1. I don't think that's a real ticker, NIST. I don't think anyone uses that. So you're just going to confuse people more. Just use BCH. But I think the problem with this is that people who support Bitcoin Cash are taking this as, you know, because obviously they're saying that Bitcoin Cash is the original vision of Bitcoin. And so they're looking at it from the white paper perspective. Like, does it implement the ideals of Bitcoin that were in the white paper? Whereas this paper was applying that perspective, but on a technical level, to whether Bitcoin or Bitcoin Cash was the original blockchain from a technical perspective. That's a completely different situation, because when it comes to forks, you know, the only way that Bitcoin Cash would have been the original Bitcoin is if they had made no changes since the fork happened, and it didn't. Bitcoin got a soft fork, which is opt-in, so it wasn't a hard fork. Bitcoin Cash hard forked off and changed the difficulty adjustment algorithm, which is clearly a technical difference from the original Bitcoin chain that we had last year. So I guess you could argue that the original chain doesn't exist anymore, but if, you know, it's depending on how you look at soft forks. I mean, I don't think most people would say that soft forks are breaking from the original chain because they're opt-in. But Bitcoin Cash did. They hard forked. They broke from the original chain through a hard fork. So that's a clear difference.
And I mean, you know, like I was saying, like even this correction is still strictly technically speaking incorrect, where they're saying that SegWit literally splits transactions in two. That's completely false. It commits to each part of a transaction in a different manner, but a transaction is still a single serialized piece of data. It is still the single thing with inputs, outputs, and the signatures. So like keep on them and don't just take the first correction they give as if, okay, that's good now.
Yeah, I mean, at least they didn't pull a Timothy B. Lee and say that the signature data was stored outside the blockchain.
Yeah, that's true. No, I mean, for me, like NIST has been basically the PR firm for the NSA trying to weaken encryption since like way back in the 90s when they were really pushing DES and saying that triple DES wasn't necessary. And in the Snowden leaks had NIST really pushing for weaknesses in random key generate or random number generation. So it actually, if anything, this seems to be almost like, if I don't go too tinfoil hat here, an indication that maybe the government is involved with trying to support Bitcoin Cash the way that they have been involved in supporting insecure crypto solutions in the past. It would be completely consistent with their behavior over the last 30 years to do that. So, I don't think you have to be too crazy to think that that might be what's going on here. But I guess it's helpful to know the context, right? These guys are not looking out for your best interest. They're not trying to find the secure solution. Or if they are, it will be the first time they've done so in about 30 years. So.
But JW has bigger block sizes, and that apparently prevents surveillance.
Oh my gosh, I know. And the whole like small block or the hard fork, soft fork thing, I think that's interesting. And I think you can make an argument that that really matters. But for me, Bitcoin is the open source project that is secure, right? I don't like if we hard forked because there was a security vulnerability in, I don't know, SHA-256 or something, that would be fine, right? It would still be Bitcoin. Especially if it's so obvious to anybody with technical knowledge, like the smallest technical knowledge of what's going on here, that this was not a real debate, right? It was like debating for blank passwords, right? Like this is not serious.
Yeah, white blood cells, a Bitcoin attack.
I mean, honestly, at the end of the day, like if it really came down to some kind of change like that, who cares what it's called? It's the secure system. And I mean, at the end of the day, that's what we're all here for, right?
Totally. Yep. Absolutely. Well said.
And now this next story, I am going to say we should speculate wildly on, because there's only a vague amount of details. Samsung is putting their foundries to use producing ASICs now. And as described here, they're partnering with a Chinese Bitcoin mining equipment manufacturer. They don't name who, they just say that it's a Chinese company. And so one of the things I want to look at here, with Samsung being one of the few companies that could really give a company like TSMC a run for their money with the amount of foundry space they have, is this Bitmain they're partnering with, or is this How Long Mining? Because if this is Bitmain, this could be very bad. If this is How Long Mining, then this could give Bitmain and TSMC a serious run for their money. And it's not really clear which of these companies it is yet.
Yeah, I mean, if you're talking about heavy speculation on this idea, like it definitely, they're in the area, and I mean, like it does, doesn't say exactly who. So I mean, like we could definitely assume that it's, some big players, and like you're saying, if it's big players in the area, it's either How Long or Bitmain, and I'd really hope that they are working with How Long, but I don't know, man. I thought they were going to get into the game and try to start doing something for themselves, because they would realize like that this is sort of the way that they would have to go. But I don't know if they're working with another company and like, I don't know, business as usual, sort of centralized, like the power and everything, like that kind of makes sense. Like maybe it would be Bitmain, but yeah, that's just some heavy speculation on my part. Like I've got hopes that they're working with How Long, or just any other company that's trying to jump up in the space, because yeah, it would be pretty disturbing to hear that they were working with Bitmain. But I don't know, man. The mining sector is one of those things where I really don't know the full it's like there's so many different things to factor into that equation that it's really hard for me to say like with any sort of degree of certainty as to what they might be thinking, other than, you know, they want to move ASIC mining forward. And I don't know, we can hope that maybe they're going to help decentralize this mining and not move further towards centralization. But my only suspect, as far as like them maybe working with Bitmain more than any other, is the fact that it's Samsung and they do business as usual, I think.
But it's see, I'm kind of leaning more towards how long potentially, because if you look here in the long term, they're planning on expanding beyond China into South Korea and Japan as well. And if everybody remembers, when How Long first made the initial statement about the Dragon Mint miners, one of their long-term plans was considering like open sourcing their chip specs and actually trying to encourage other players to get into the ecosystem. So it kind of makes sense to me that they would try to partner with some kind of competitor to TSMC and actually really ramp that up. And I mean, in the long term, if they do follow through with the intent to really open source everything and kind of help new competitors jump into the market without all the overhead of designing everything themselves, like this would make a lot of sense. And then when you look at the potential for Samsung to expand into Korea and Japan, like we all know GMO and some other Japanese companies are moving into mining now. And it would really make sense that, you know, How Long would want to kind of take these chip designs and get them into as many different players' hands as possible, instead of trying to just be the Bitmain slayer themselves. You know what I mean? Like it would be a more sound, logical play in my mind to get other players involved and not try to do that single-handedly.
That's a great point there about South Korea, Japan, and China. You know, yeah, that kind of, you know, picks me up a little bit out of the, you know, business as usual. Like maybe they're seeing the smart side of this.
Well, the thing I'm wondering is, if it was with How Long, why wouldn't they announce that? Like, why is it a secret in the first place?
Well, I mean, on the flip side, if it was Bitmain, why wouldn't they announce that? Because Bitmain has been pretty clear about their relationships with the actual manufacturers and foundries and all that. And I really don't see why Bitmain would kind of try to keep that under hat. But whereas Howling is kind of the upstart in the field, like maybe they're just kind of trying to keep their cards close to the chest. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I'm really wondering at the end of the day is when we're going to get exploding miners. I want them to catch fire.
It's coming.
Oh man, yeah, I think I agree with you guys. It would be better if it wasn't the big incumbent in the near term, but in the long term, any money that goes into this space is going to be good, even in the medium term, because if they do stuff that is kind of dirty and they make profits, that's going to attract competition. If they play fair, that's obviously better in the short term. But either way, you know, somebody like Samsung and more people just investing in the technology, it's just going to democratize the technology, right? Just like if we invest more in cell phones, even if we do it out of maliciousness, somebody in Africa is probably going to be able to buy a cell phone cheaper as a result of this work within a surprisingly short period of time. So I think either way, it's good news. But yeah, I'm with you guys. I'm kind of hoping that we're going to get to stop having to talk about Jihan sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I mean, it really, like, I find it like hard to believe that How Long would go through all this effort without trying to secure some kind of relationship directly with the actual foundries, because that's a big part of what has given Bitmain like the leverage in this space they have. Like they developed this really tight relationship with the TSMC and were a huge customer for them, to the point where I believe last time we went over this, I think it was like 5% or something of TSMC's revenue was coming from ASIC manufacturing, the vast majority of which I assume is coming from Bitmain directly. And like that kind of creates that huge barrier. And I just feel like that they would be very stupid, which I don't think they are at How Long, to not have kind of thought that through and secured some kind of relationship with a foundry, to not be in the situation where they're kind of having to outbid Bitmain for foundry time, because and deal with the fact that they have like the longer history with the foundry operators and potentially preference in different situations depending on the kind of volume they're dealing with. So I'm pretty hopeful that this isn't just Jihan pulling a James Bond villain move.
Yeah, but we got to remember, like, whatever games and deals are made and like commitments and volume pricing and all that sort of stuff, that's like eating around the edges. And I know that it's a low margin business, so that can be a big part of the profit. But the main reason that Jihan has whatever share of the market he has is that there's other people that have a lot of money that don't want it. They don't think they're going to get their money back. They don't think it's going to be profitable, so they're staying out. But over time, more and more people are going, you know what, Bitcoin's been around for a long time. The price seems to have a certain trajectory. It does seem like a profitable business. You know, there's a certain amount of, like, you know, either overt or covert espionage going on to try to figure out what Bitmain's profitability is. And if it's big enough and we have enough confidence, we're going to go in, right? Those relationships dissolve surprisingly fast when somebody writes a big check. And the only thing stopping those big checks is just confidence that they're going to get their money back. So, so a lot of these problems are they're really annoying in the short term, but they're solved in the long term, I think.
Yeah, and just going back to, like, you know, why haven't they issued a public statement? That's like another one of those things where it's like, you know, they just, I don't know, like their game theory on whether or not they're trying to, you know, do something. But I think Shinobi's right on. It's just like, you play these games close to the chest. And, you know, I think that Bitmain, you know, if they were connected with Samsung, that they would issue a public statement. I'm just thinking that. But just because, I mean, that would be good for Bitcoin Cash, I'm pretty sure. And REC, I'm not saying REC, but I mean, like, it could do something as far as price action goes. And why they would withhold the statement seems a little bit more curious as to why How Long would. I can understand them not wanting to get too much out until everything's sort of set up, for sure.
And I mean, it's like with the very tactical nature of mining. Like, I just, like, I'm going to be a very sad monkey if this is Bitmain and people aren't playing chess with the proper forethought. But I guess little surprise bit of news that wasn't in the show notes. Janine just found. You wanna take her away?
Yeah, breaking news. This is like one of the only articles in the Financial Times I've ever seen that's been positive about Bitcoin. And basically, he kind of summarizes some recent articles going over like the value of Bitcoin versus blockchain, which we've been apparently debating for the last 3 years straight, unending. But I do like how he begins the article, because that's probably funny enough. He says, for a moment, Bitcoin never existed. Like, imagine they never existed. Ethereum never existed, and the whole crazy world of cryptocurrencies never happened. Someone comes along and tells you to imagine an electronic network for moving money anywhere in the world that no one owns. It's an intriguing idea. It's an unprecedented idea. In the entirety of human history, such a thing has literally never existed. Would your response really be, LOL, the true value of Bitcoin is zero? I just do a Valley Girl accent there.
That was pretty good. I like the Valley Girl. That's nice.
Yeah, well said.
But yeah, it's like this. Yeah, this is kind of weird to see.
I was trying to imitate Isabella, but I have no idea what she sounds like.
That's what she sounds like.
That's just how her voice sounds in my head.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
No, that is super funny. I mean, that is how I feel every day. I'm like, this technology is amazing, and everybody's just like not interested in even learning about it half the time. What's the? Are we at a shoulder or a neck or a triangle? What's happening?
Bitcoin is going to be the new Swiss bank. Everybody,
we're in
for criminals.
Oh man.
Even though I have a Swiss bank, like, aren't you jealous?
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't know. Hopefully, you know, maybe Financial Times is seeing it. More and more people will see it. You know, like it's one of the things where at, you know, my meetup, I'm seeing people they're interested in like the big idea of it. I mean, like there's definitely people that are interested in the speculative aspect. But I would say the greater portion are starting to see that there's like something really mysterious here that they didn't quite see. Like most people, when they initially look at Bitcoin, they see it as a scam, and then they start to see it as an investment tool, and then they kind of come around. And hey, if the Financial Times is starting to come around, and I'm starting to see a little bit more people at the meetup, maybe it's you know, just like going to keep going forward and keep spreading out like wildfire, and eventually you know, we'll have people starting to run to this value proposition, and maybe that Bitcoinization really does kick off.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, absolutely.
You want to take us through the Kodak story, Janine?
Yes, I'm ready for this. So,
all right, go.
If you, you know, we talked about this before. KodakCoin has, or Kodak One, that's the company, has made some very big claims about how they're going to democratize photography and they're going to empower creators all around the world. Well, it turns out that those creators that they're talking about are basically accredited investors, which means you have to have at least $1 million in net worth, and also demonstrate sustainable income of at least $200,000 a year. Oh God, ambulance coming. Okay, it's gone. So yeah, if you were interested in, you know, being part of this photography democracy, you probably were disappointed because their ICO has kind of been postponed because they've had 40,000 applicants. Amazingly, they somehow managed to find 40,000 accredited investors who are interested in photography. Never would have thought that. But they've had to postpone it to verify all of these interested persons. Very long notice on their website saying, yes, we have to follow SEC regulations, and it is important to highlight that an expression of interest in KodakCoin is non-binding and involves no obligation or commitment. But more interestingly than that, yeah. Oh, and they do clarify. So originally they were saying U.S. persons only, but now they're saying a select non-U.S. persons in accordance with applicable laws in each jurisdiction will be allowed to participate. But who knows when that will be? Because apparently in a video I saw from only a few weeks ago, the founder, not the founder, the leader of this Kodak One, I don't know what it is, probably a subsidiary of Kodak or something. It's basically a partnership of a bunch of companies. One of the guys said that the platform itself will not be available until 2019. So is this going to be another is this going to be another Brave Bat token situation where the platform takes half a year to come up and the token gets released in the next few months? Who knows? But what I found interesting that I kind of researched yesterday is the names of the companies are a bit of a maze of shells. Yeah, I think if you go to that thread, the tweet thread, yeah. It's kind of a maze because if you scroll down, yeah, next one. Yeah, so I did a bit of research into some of the companies that are making this, because it's, you go to their website and it's like, where are the developers? Like, they have like advertising people, they have licensing people, legal people, ICO people, or at least people who run ICO projects, but no developers necessarily. What I found out is that the company that they're working with, ICOX Innovations, it used to be called AppCoin Innovations. And before that, it was called Redstone Literary Agents for some reason. So apparently a literary agency company who is like a conduit between authors and publishers decided that it wanted to do ICOs in the last 2 years. So they've changed company names like 3 times in the last 2 years. And if you look, for some reason, when you go to the Kodak One page, if you look at the people that are on the team, you will notice that it's exactly the same people that are on the ICOX innovation team, even though ICOX is only listed as a company advising Kodak One. None of these individuals who are on the Kodak One website have ICOX in their bio, which is weird. It gave me the impression when I saw it as like, oh, it's a bunch of people independently working on this. But no, it's basically everyone from this one company that's changed names 3 times. The most interesting part, though, is that the company isn't, none of these people that are listed here actually own the ICOX company. They're not even officers at the company. They're just currently employees, because the company was literally founded on, I think, January 16th of this year. So it's not even a month old yet. And the guy who is the president, the director, and the treasurer, basically a bunch of different roles that you think would have different people. It's one guy. The company is registered in Nevada. And it's a German, I'll pull up the name really quick, but it's this Geiskopf. It's this one guy who's basically, that's who the company is registered under. Now, technically, the list of officers in terms of paperwork that you have to file with the SEC isn't due until a year later. So they're not doing anything illegal, but, you know, keep in mind, this company is not even a month old. And they've changed names like 3 times in the past 2 years. The most interesting thing, though, is the guy who is the president of ICOX. He also used to be a director, and I think even president of an e-cigarette company that went into bankruptcy about a year or 2 ago. I think it was like March 2017. He resigned as director just as the company was going into bankruptcy. One of the reasons being because something to do with increased regulation on e-cigarette products, and so the company went bankrupt. But I thought that was interesting. Lots of interesting connections in history here.
My goodness, like 40,000 people gave money to this project, and they have no developers. And like, I don't know.
No, they're waiting in line. They're waiting in line for the opportunity to give money to this project.
Yeah, there hasn't been a sale yet. It hasn't happened. They're verifying identities.
Okay.
But I'm pretty sure that the stock price did pretty well off this announcement. So somebody got paid, even though this is what's brilliant about it. You don't even have to sell an ICO. You just have to say that you're thinking about it, and you can make a ton of money at this point. And there's no way that you can end up going to jail for that. It's not insider trading. It's none of the shenanigans that Armstrong at Coinbase is having to do, put themselves at risk. All you have to do is be a publicly traded company. And if your market cap isn't too big, although I bet if Amazon made an announcement, their stock would just go through the roof too. So yeah, all you have to do is send the signal that you're aware that cryptocurrency exists and you're working on it seriously, and everybody freaks out because there's all this kind of really weak and sloppy knowledge that something really important is happening. And so it's not necessarily the smartest moves that you see people making, but they're doing their best, and they know something big is happening.
Yeah, that's where it's like, you know, why hire a developer when you know it's like just this real speculative thing that you're doing to increase your stock price. And, you know, there's like, you know, it's probably that sentiment right now where we've talked about. It's like, if you're a company that is publicly traded and you're not doing something like this, are you doing your financial, you know, diligence for your investors, you know, something that you should think you should announce. And yeah, it just, goodness gracious, it really just shows how stupid this this whole thing is getting out of control. Like
and it's not just Bitcoin related stuff. I think it just shows how stupid this whole system is, right? Over 100 years, we've created a system where there's a ton of dumb investors. There's just a lot of people that they're not investing in the gas station down the street that they could probably count customer heads and get an idea of. They're investing in stuff that's collateralized and abstracted 15 layers, and there's scammers at each one of those layers. And they've been told since they were 4 years old that it's really important to diversify and give your money into the hands of these monkeys. And it's just going to take a while for that to burn out.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, so I actually didn't get to the funniest part. So Venn Digital, which is a German company, yeah, this is their website, or what used to be their website. Because actually before KodakCoin, the project was called RideCoin, RYDE, and it was particularly targeted at paparazzi. So this whole photo platform to license and like put photos on the blockchain, it was for paparazzi photographers, not even just photographers in general. It was for paparazzi. Um, and apparently Kodak came along. They're like, this is awesome. And they bought it out and changed the name to KodakCoin. So actually the project isn't really being run by Kodak. It's being run by Venn Digital / ICOX thing, which by the way have a lot of directors and employees in common, I noticed. Yeah, and they're basically allowed to use Kodak images and things. They've been given a license for that. So Kodak isn't really doing anything here. They basically just bought a ICO project that was intended for paparazzi photographers. But of course, that's not in the marketing material because that would, turn people off, I guess.
So they just bought up something that they thought was cool, that might be successful at everything, and I don't know. It just drives me wild to think that like there's all this like money being thrown around and everything, and I don't know. It's one of these things where I'm just not used to these sort of numbers and everything just so willy-nilly like that. It's just like it really just drives me up the wall because I'm just thinking about these things can be used for not this Kodak coin, but like there's just other places where value could go that could be helpful instead of so destructive, and really just like a complete nothing positive added to the system. It's ridiculous.
Kodak Coin, ensuring you get paid for stalking and harassing people with blockchain.
Oh, but actually you're not insured to get paid because apparently it's going to be very hard to sell the token unless you can probably find another accredited investor to buy it from you. So good luck, guys.
Yeah, I think that's probably the funniest part. Like that this isn't going to be something you can just go, when Polo? When can I dump on Polo? But yeah, the next thing up shouldn't be too big of a shock for anybody who watched the first ZK Snacks that me and Janine did a little bit ago. Bitfury is apparently pivoting to a Chainanalytics business, and they are launching a tool called Crystal, specifically tailored for law enforcement. And yeah, for anybody who watched the ZK Snacks episode, they're pretty much taking all of the metadata that they've been crawling around social media and any cryptocurrency sites and compiling that into data that they're offering with this tool set. And it's pretty much a very simplistic GUI setup that can be either used directly through the software itself or plugged into other law enforcement forensic tools through an API with a lot of automated features. So they're pretty much setting things up so that law enforcement doesn't really have to deal with a lot of the low-level data. They can set things up to autonomously track chains of transactions, autonomously identify different entities. And the one thing that really bothers me is Bitfury apparently has a risk scoring algorithm that they're using with this, which I can only imagine is pretty much based on the metadata that they're gathering from randomly crawling cryptocurrency sites or sections of the internet. And this is going to be what law enforcement uses to decide whether your address is engaged in any kind of illicit activity. So they are literally providing this tool and data set to law enforcement, grabbing random information off of the internet with who knows how many holes or gaps in it, And that is what law enforcement is going to be using to decide whether you are a person of interest or somebody they should be tracking to catch engaged in criminal activity. And yeah, I mean, if you talked to me a year ago, I would have been a big supporter of Bitfury. But looking at this, they are proactively developing tools that destroy user privacy. And in my opinion, unless they're tying this in with very detailed data from things like exchanges, which would bother me for a whole nother set of reasons, the idea that law enforcement is going to be deciding whether or not to scrutinize you as a criminal, being based on just random scoring, based on data collected from internet forums, that's fucking ridiculous. I mean, that's outrageous. And like the one thing I note here is where is the mention of the kinds of error rates or erroneous connections there? Like where are the tool sets to help law enforcement filter that out? They're pretty much just giving them the information, the Chainanalytics software, and a dialing knob to just decide what their own risk score threshold is. Like this is ridiculous.
Yeah, no, it's not good. I do think that now that Lightning is out, and we still got some work to do with that, I feel like the momentum is shifting of all the best minds in the space to focus on fungibility now. The stuff that I saw in the last couple of days about confidential transactions looks super encouraging, and Schnorr signatures, or I'll call them Schnorr signatures since that seems to be what everybody's calling them. But the potential of being able to aggregate a bunch of transactions through Schnorr signatures is really, really exciting to me. So I'm not too nervous about it, and I also don't think that these guys are going to do a very good job. But I do think that we should just start randomly throwing out garbage data on our Twitter profiles. So we should start making up addresses that we're never going to use, maybe not even invalid ones, and throw them out there. Because I'm sure that whatever they're using isn't super intelligent. And it's
or
not
take random addresses that have been used or other people's addresses and just start completely screwing with the data set.
Yeah, it's probably already pretty bad. I mean, you don't have to do a very good job to get a law enforcement contract. And, maybe these guys are also trying to get ahead of what they perceive as a threat to their business by saying, hey, we're friends of law enforcement. You don't want to regulate us too much or hit us with a heavy hand. But yeah, either way, I doubt that this is going to be super effective. And more importantly, like we're on it, right? Like we know it's a problem, and we're making tons of progress to solve it.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to point out is that there was a tweet from Roger Ver that was really funny in the last few days that said that Bitfury was the reason that Bitfury was going to surveil Bitcoin users was because they were small block advocates. This whole thing about small blocks. Before we get into this tweet, which I thought was funny, do you know how the NSA operates, Roger? Because I don't think it would be difficult for them to look through data on a blockchain that's only 160 something gigabytes at the moment. Like, it's not a huge amount of data. Like, have you seen their data centers? I don't think I don't think small blocks or bigger blocks have anything to do with that. I don't think if you made the blocks bigger, that would somehow magically protect you from surveillance. That's not how it works. I also want to point out that, it's kind of up in the air whether Bitfury is really in favor of big blocks or small blocks anyway, or block size increases, because obviously they were one of the companies who signed the NYA, the Psycho 2X agreement. And then we have George here who is saying that actually, no, that was a different tweet. Anyway, there's another tweet where George was saying that that he's not in favor of increasing the block size because it's not a good fix to the scaling issue. So kind of up in the air, because Bitfury for a while was kind of hinting that they might not be in favor of Psycho 2X, but who knows? They never officially dropped out of it, so I don't really care. They were basically signaling for it. But I thought this tweet was funny because if anyone was in any doubt about whether Bitfury cared about privacy, yeah, basically, you know, taking issue with someone who doesn't use their name on their Twitter profile. Yeah, sorry, that's kind of what Bitcoin is, George. Bitcoin is a pseudonymous system. So if you have a problem with people using pseudonyms, maybe you shouldn't be using Bitcoin at all.
Yeah, it's always pleasant to deal with some asshole who doesn't even want to say what he really wants to call you as well, with all your little gibberish shit there.
I think like George is not the most mature person in the world. When BIP 148 was in the big fervor after the NYA announcement, I was pretty much advocating proof of work change if it led to a split that was not successful. And he pretty much threatened to sue me and then blocked me on Twitter. So yeah, I don't think that Bitfury is going to be around long term. I mean, especially if the price slides into a little bit of a bear trend in the long term and doesn't continue with this rally, I don't think they're going to survive the next year. And I think that's a big part of why they're probably branching off into things like this Emmercoin scam and Chainanalytics, because they're desperately searching for revenue because they're just not able to compete effectively in their core business of mining.
I think this is also just a great example of like sort of these unknown incentives that miners play, where it's like, you know, it's like we're making money with Bitcoin, but we're also developing this technology that might kind of serve our purpose and this purpose of the government. And, you know, we got this plan to sell it to an intelligence agency, and it's one of those unknowns. And then you start seeing things like this, and you kind of have to start like Jocko was saying, you know, you kind of have to think adversarially and all that. And yeah, it's just it's upsetting to see people that are you know, relevant in the space sort of just like start ripping at the different value propositions of Bitcoin and start you know, doing their own little things to I guess, like you're saying, try to stay relevant as we scale with all these different solutions to try and route around this problem of all these chain analytic guys.
Yeah, it's definitely like watching two bad guys fight and then trying to figure out who's the worst of them. I'm sure that they know what they're doing. It's kind of an old trick, right? You have two people that are on the same side fight and then say stuff like, "Well, you're against big blocks because you're against privacy." And it's just absurd, because the whole issue with big blocks was not whether they were big, but whether they were so dangerously big that they were going to cause centralization, which would obviously not be great for privacy or security or anything else that we care about. So it's kind of comical to watch those two idiots slap each other and put on a show and then try to create a narrative. But yeah, I think they're unimportant in the long run.
And speaking of unimportant players in the long run, two hilarious stories involving nChain. The first of which is a partnership with CentB, a merchant processor in South Africa. It's pretty much just a quick little rundown of the company and the people involved. One of the CEOs, Angus Brown, was actually involved in a scheme called eBucks back in 2000, which was an early attempt at a bank-backed digital currency. I tried digging around for a little material with this, but Google kind of had a eBay program destroy the results, so I wasn't able to actually find anything in time. But pretty much just talking about attempting to roll out merchant services using Bitcoin Cash and actually go around and convince merchants that Bitcoin Cash is the superior merchant solution. And they're actually going to be launching a wallet sometime this year. But that feeds into the next story, which is 10 times as hilarious. CoinGeek.com, Calvin Iyer, Craig Wright's partner in crime, is donating $300,000 to the Electron Cash team led by Yanold Fookball. and is partnering with nChain to provide technical resources. And the most hilarious part to me is that they're going to share intellectual property with the Electron Cash team, but licensed so that it can only be used on the Bitcoin Cash chain. And I just find that ridiculously hilarious that they're throwing $300,000 a year at an air quote software team that literally just forked a pre-existing open source piece of software and changed a few things to be compatible with Bitcoin Cash. Like something that has been maintained for years with nothing effectively except donations. They're throwing $300,000 at to provide people the software to use Bitcoin Cash. And pretty much what they're doing is trying to port it to different things, including a Nokia phone, which I would like to see, because that is not going to be just as simple as developing a Java app for Android. And one of the long-term things they're looking at is threshold signatures, which is really kind of silly. I mean, like, that threshold signatures are an interesting concept, but when you really look at things, Schnorr signatures would pretty much effectively get the same utility and the same efficiency when you bring into account signature aggregation, and you can just have multi-signature wallets condensed down to single signatures. So it seems to me like they're just intentionally doing a different thing than Bitcoin core developers just to do a different thing, so they can point at what is being done on this side of the fence and go, this is conspiracy, nonsense. And it's like, it's insane. I mean, like, this is, I think, like the third or fourth announcement involving nChain I've seen where they claim they're going to license things so they can only be used on the Bitcoin Cash blockchain. Well, I have a question for you. How are you going to stop me if I take that and use it on a different blockchain? What are you going to do? Are you going to go complain to GitHub? Well, what are you going to do when I take it and put it on an encrypted repo on something like Keybase? Are you going to stop that? What if I take the software and just share it over BitTorrent? Are you going to stop that? Like, what are they going to do if by some miracle of God they actually come up with some solid technology? How are you going to stop me from using it? Like, what are you going to do?
That's all I could think when you were saying that. Like, I will cut off my pinky finger if these guys write one line of code that anybody else wants to use ever. Like, the incompetence that they have displayed up to this point is so huge that they couldn't, as sort of a community, they can't even write like a couple lines of code, get it code reviewed, and not write an off by one error like every time, right? Like, they can't even do the most basic sort of changes at a very minor level. So yeah, that's my bet. If one line of code gets written by these monkeys that gets taken seriously by any other open source project, it doesn't even have to be Bitcoin related, right? Like, any other open source project, they could make any contribution that's worthwhile, I will cut off my pinky finger on camera.
Don't say it. There's going to be some idiot that does something that makes you try and cut off your finger.
Right. Now somebody's going to write like an ad blocker or something and just stuff it in there.
They're going to hold you to it. But this is like as aggravating as the Kodak ICO story. It's like, you got this one side where you got people that don't have a developer and they just like got all the pump going. And then you got these guys that are like just developers, and they say, well, we change like one parameter, or we do this one little different thing, and now let's just throw out this article and gobble up some money. This is just like, I don't know. It's like polar sides of the space with like a same issue.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it's there, JW. Sorry.
Oh, sorry, guys. You're hearing me peel an orange.
Sounds
for the listeners at home, that's an orange.
I was wondering why I was getting hungry.
But yeah, it's just the entire thing is laughable. Like it's almost like nChain is just intentionally being a recursive parody of itself, parodying Blockstream. I mean, like their entire business model is literally developing protocol stuff and infrastructure. It is the exact same business model abstractly as Blockstream. And their entire narrative is just the evil Blockstream patenting things and developing all this stuff that you're going to be forced to use, while they're outright stating that they're going to patent things and only license it for use on a blockchain they approve of. Like the level of cognitive dissonance is mind-boggling.
It's because they have CSW and he has a wheelbarrow of degrees.
Yeah.
Satoshi.
Satoshi's vision, right?
Those degrees make him immune from criticism. And he's also worked for the DHS, which is super impressive, guys.
Oh yeah. Yeah, because like, come on, DHS, keep us safe. Keep Bitcoin safe. We can count on nobody except one of the most incompetent, redundant government bureaucracies ever created. And real quick, for those who don't know, if you look at the departments in the DHS, they're literally just duplicates of other agencies or branches in the government. It's an entirely redundant appendage with no actual reason to exist.
Well, I think it's time. I think it's time we talk about the furry in the room.
Oh boy.
What?
Oh boy.
That was quite the transition.
You got me looking around the room, making sure there's no furry coming up behind me.
See, this makes me conflicted inside. Like I have such an internal conflict looking at this, because like like he sarcastically, like whenever asked about it now, just goes, I was really high when I wrote that, when asked about the entire hyper Bitcoinization essay. But it really is like a pivotal piece of literature in this space. And I just feel so conflicted when I think back to first reading that, and then the kind of stuff that Daniel espouses now. I mean, it's like two entirely different people.
Yeah, the way that I think about
the reason I want to bring him.
Oh, go ahead.
No, the reason I wanted to bring him up is because he's apparently one of the speakers at the, is it Satoshi's Vision Conference? Is that what it's called? Oh my God, that article. And they've also announced that CSW will also be speaking at the conference of his vision. But he's not the keynote speaker, because, it wouldn't make sense to have fake Satoshi keynote his own conference.
Oh God!
No.
God, party
Oh
crasher.
man!
Gate crasher.
What's up, you flippin' Twinkie smugglers? I'm Satoshi, and it's my vision.
What's
You
up,
have a better
Blake?
chance of being Satoshi than CSW. I'll give you that.
Yes. See, that's how I rise to the top. I just compete against scum, and then the cream rises, and then it gets slicked off to go into some other type of recipe. And that's the secret, man. That's the secret. You just compete against scum. You don't have to do shit. And now I'm Satoshi. See, biggest win ever made.
Nicely done. I'll give you that. That's a hell of a lot smarter strategy than Daniel Krawitz is using right now.
Dude, it's just like how, like, when you're on top of a mountain of credibility, I mean, how do you get to the bottom so fast of a mountain of credibility? I mean, you built that mountain with your hands, and then you go skiing and rappelling down it at 1,000 miles an hour. How do you not notice the difference between what you were doing when you were building the mountain and when your credibility is sailing down the mountain at 1,000 miles an hour? Like, how, like, it seems like two different activities that should be distinct enough that people could tell the difference between what they're engaged in. Am I totally off here?
It's called brand liquidation. You build up a brand name, and then you realize, oh my gosh, I'm just some dude that has a degree in economics, or that attended some Mises Institute seminars. I'm a pretty smart guy in general, but I'm a junior developer and I don't make very much money. So how am I? And I'm not the most attractive dude in the world. And there's a lot of ladies in the neighborhood that aren't paying attention to me.
That's just hard.
No, I mean, look, man, I'm not on camera because I have a face for radio too. But but it's a factor. I'm just saying it's a factor, right? And he's a young guy, and I think that this is obviously just wild speculation, but knowing what I know about human nature and how undervalued sort of that intellectual class is, unless you're part of academia, and he's not part of academia, right? I mean, he's a junior developer. He's not making very much money, and I got to think that puts him in a place where he could be tempted to say some stupid stuff. And I honestly think that when he first started this, and even when I was trying to talk to him, I mean, it wasn't that long ago, a few weeks ago, I think that he thought he had sort of a middle ground, right? I think he thought he had a game where he could retain 85% of his credibility and still get that check, however much it was, for saying that you should hold Bitcoin Cash. And fortunately, I think it's fallen apart, and we won't have to deal with him as much in the future. But I don't think it's much of a stretch to say that that people are doing that, right? They're saying, how do I get some cash without completely destroying my brand name? And businesses do it all the time.
I would just like to thank you for calling it Bitcoin Cash and not Bcash, like John called it. Bcash. I can't believe how disrespectful John is. I mean, he called it a name that he thought was a nice name, and what if we called his stuff Stupatica, man?
That is exactly the same as using a racial slur.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, but seriously though, with like Daniel, it's like I can understand where he's coming from regarding the Bitcoin Cash issue. Like, I personally think the idea of it succeeding long term is laughable, and you're leaving money on the table, not acting accordingly. But from somebody who doesn't want to spend the time or effort in actually assessing that themselves, like, I get it. Like, he had his coins, he has his investment, he has the derivative investment in Bitcoin Cash, and he just doesn't give a shit. Like, he personally is okay with leaving that money on the table. But what
See, this is exactly why he's not that big of an idiot. Like, the question a minute ago from Blake was, why is Daniel so dumb? And you've fallen right into his rabbit hole. So he's not that dumb.
But like, here's the thing though, is like, if he wants to do that, that's fine. That's on him. That is him managing his investment. But what I take issue with is him espousing that advice to others. Yeah. Him encouraging others to remain ignorant of that, when he knows damn well that there are plenty of people out there who were not in here before that fork happened, who did not just get that hedge, air quote, for free, and who are now looking at these two things, having to ascertain the differences and the value proposition between them. And he's going around advising people literally to remain ignorant. And I just think, as somebody who is publicly speaking on the issue, that is ridiculously irresponsible.
Well, I suffer from the Dunning-Kruger effect, as we all do. I think that, the things that I do, that everybody's going to do. And so what I think is, once I have enough hodling and I have a hodl supply, after that, like, I don't really want to go around giving people financial advice that's anything except for super ironclad and concrete. Like, at that point, my reputation becomes the most valuable thing for me to increase. I don't care about increasing my hodlings anymore. And I don't see a lot of people that are of that viewpoint. There are definitely a handful. There are a set of people that are like that they favor devotion over ambition. But there's so many people that aren't, that it's shocking to me, because, again, suffering from the Dunning-Kruger effect, I only know what I'm like, and I assume that everybody else is like me because that's the only experience that I have. Then when you go around and you see that violated by so many people that are like, I'm going to sell my credibility for a couple extra cents, you're like, why would you do that? That seems like such a bad trade. Am I alone in feeling like that?
No, but listen to what not Satoshi, damn it. You screwed me up, dude. Shinobi.
Dude, I've been doxxed. So
Shinobi
just I'm not Satoshi. I'm not.
So no, but what he just said was like what Daniel has been trying to push, right? If if we had all bought the idea that he wasn't really trying to push Bcash, and all he was trying to do was say, look, if you have some, don't feel stressed out. You don't have to make a decision. Just hold both and let the market work it out. Or it's really unclear which one is stronger technically to me, so I'm just going to hold until I figure it out. Or it's a privacy violation, situation, or you have to take stuff out of cold storage, right? All these things are things that he has used sort of as his tower, right? So his moat position, as he's going back and forth, is you should hold Bcash, right? And it's because it's a hedge, right? You should hold it as a hedge because because it could be really valuable, right? And you don't want to miss out on that, right? And then he'll pull back to all of these other things, and that's such a tired and well-trodden path. But it's pretty effective, right? And he still has been able to retain a surprising amount of people that still want to give him that benefit of the doubt. Even though I've been in at least half a dozen conversations with him over the last month, including 2 hours of video, which I'll never repeat, or 3 hours, I think, where he's jumped back and forth between those positions and compromised himself. It still was relatively effective. Like most of us, maybe because of the Dunning-Kruger thing or whatever, we don't want to believe he could be that evil, and so we're still giving him the benefit of the doubt. So even if this blows up in his face, I gotta say it was a reasonable gamble. I don't think it was stupid of him to do it, depending on how big the checks are that he's gotten for pushing this stuff.
Well, I think like you're saying, it's like he's came in from this different angle where he's been in this system for a while to where he's just got the derivative and he's sitting on it. So yeah, it makes sense to try and go out there and I guess pump that hedge because it's a derivative of his, and so he can make some money off of it. I just if he's out there speaking publicly about all this, I'm glad that he's also speaking publicly about his furry Bitcoin emperor. That was something where I just I don't know, when you get to that point in the conversation, the guy had some bright ideas and everything, but I don't know, it's if anybody shows that he's got an individual perspective on things, and maybe you shouldn't be taking his advice because his individual perspective is not yours, is somebody that's got a furry Bitcoin emperor in his mind running around.
Furry Bitcoin emperor with no clothes, because the emperor wears no clothes, and the no clothes furries are pretty appealing to everybody on the internet, myself included.
He's got a pretty interesting story talking about he is the Bitcoin emperor, but he doesn't think he is, or you can approach him as he is, or he's not, and it's a funny oh man, it's a really detailed out thing. It's not just some character that popped up in his head. He's got a personality and everything.
No, this guy's putting time into it. He's painting pictures of himself as a stallion or a stag or something. It's really, really. This guy obviously. I don't think it's a stretch to say that there's some weird stuff rattling around in that noggin.
I think you're right about that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think we need to add Oh my God, that was the choppiest thing I've ever heard. That was awesome. Janine, try that again. We lost Janine.
Yeah, your audio's bad, Janine.
GCHQ got her. Uh-oh. Abort. Well, I don't know. You guys want to slide along to the next story?
Yeah, I think we ripped on Daniel enough.
I think Daniel's a good guy.
Wait. Janine's back. Maybe she's got that statement. Hold up.
All right.
You gotta listen to that first interview or even the second one I did with him. And if you still think that, then let me know, because
I don't think he's a murderer or somebody that goes around violating the non-aggression principle and stuff like that. Has he made mistakes or he's got egg on his face a little bit? But I don't think he's a bad guy or anything like that. I like him. He's contributed meaningfully in the past. So every character.
Yeah, what I'm saying is that I think he's a scammer, right? And he's trying to sell innocent people to buy garbage. But
that would compromise my view of definitely.
Oh, well, that's my position on him, is that that's exactly him. But yeah, there's a big difference between that and murder. Although I will say that his art makes me kind of think maybe he's killed some people. But other than that, I really have no reason to.
Oh man, I mean, it's just. I hope that.
No, seriously, you got to look at, if you go on his Twitter feed, you got to find the one where he, this caricature of himself is standing in front of like 3 ascending pyramids in the background. Like, it is like Hitler would have been like, dude, that is too much. We got to tone this shit down a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, I'm with you with the eagles, okay? We have the eagles with the wings standing over me. I like the big red thing. But the 3 ascending pyramids in the background, that's too far. Nobody's going to buy that.
Janine's back. What were you saying before, Janine?
I was just going to say, for a furry, having no clothes is fine. Just don't let the emperor lose his fur.
Yeah, no clothes on those furries. I think that's like
So
the way to
disturbing.
go. So yeah, those furries, they stay. I don't know. I'm not too much into that game, but I think the game is to stay pretty closeless.
Oh my gosh, that's not even the one that I was talking about. Dude.
Now
That is...
now that you mention it, that totally looks like a Hitler style.
That's not even the one. Like, he loves that 3 triangles thing. There's one that looks like he's standing at the bottom of like it's a painting, actually. It's not even a sketch. It looks like he's standing at the bottom of a like an Aztec temple, and it just ascends in the background. It's really, but that one's not great.
Man, I like to be creative. I like pyramids and shit. I'm gonna make a pyramid thing so you guys fucking leave Daniel and make fun of me for a while.
Dude, do I have to like compete? Do I have to get portraits of me as a monkey made now, and commission artists for that?
If you do, you need to have like a bunch of other monkeys like bowing down and worshiping you or something if you're even going to have a chance to give him a run for his money. Even then, I don't think you can pull it off.
Yeah, I think I would laugh too much. But
dude, what's with the price? Let's pump Bitcoin, dude. Bitcoin's going to go to $1 million. Let's go up price.
Price doesn't matter. It doesn't. It's irrelevant, Blake, because we're putting land titles on the blockchain. The price doesn't matter.
8863. It's a good time to buy. It's a good time to buy.
No, sell it all. Bitcoin's dead. It's all over, guys. We're pack up. The show's canceled. Thanks for watching, everybody.
Oh no! It's October prices.
I'm only up like 800% for the year. I'm wrecked.
Totally.
Wow. But I mean, like this tweet though is Jeb Bush scrambling for a semblance of relevancy after Donald Trump did just insult his way to the presidency.
That's so funny. Why is Jeb like? What's up with Jeb? Okay, Patrick Byrne, pretty cool, but Patrick Byrne is now with George Soros on some shit. Now he's like, Jeb Bush is tweeting and all that stuff. It's like, what is going on with these people? Like, I like Patrick Byrne, but these other 2 people, I'm not a huge fan of.
He's just latching on to the ideas, and I mean, it's you guys can read this article if you want, but don't really need that right now. But the issue of like land titles
what's the summary of the article real quick for anybody
pretty much
that didn't see the title? Putting land titles on a blockchain. And I mean, like, I don't necessarily think that's the proper solution, but it is an issue that in a lot of places you do have a lack of coherent like title registries and records, and it really does create problems for people who own land who are trying to leverage that for like a loan or other investments, or actually like unlock and utilize the value in that. But
yeah, definitely. Like title and clouds on title and stuff like that needs consensus. You need consensus about who has the title to things and who has done work and has a lien on various different titles. There's a lot of information that needs to be stored with rich forms of consensus. Is a blockchain with all that security the best way to do it? I don't know. It seems a little bit overblown, but we definitely do need consensus in that space. Yeah,
well, I mean, like Peter Todd is actually I'll try to track this video down. I always have trouble when I look for it, but he has this he came up with this ideal of a one-use seal, which is pretty much just like a cryptographic primitive you can use without a blockchain to actually prove a transfer of things. And pretty much to like a bigger picture of the scheme is all you really need is like a master cryptographic key to sign a root title that's like recognized by whatever authority is in power in that geographic area.
But
And
a
you
title is
don't
a
really need
collection
a
of rights.
blockchain.
You do,
No,
though. A
but
title is
that's
a collection of rights,
thing,
and you
Blake,
can break
once
them up.
you have that root title with its own key, to transfer that title, you sign somebody else's title. And
How do you
then
sign,
in a way,
so you're going to like sign hunting rights for another party?
no, but that's the thing is you can make this more complex without a blockchain because you just need that root title signed by the authority key. And then that title's history effectively becomes its own blockchain secured by that root title. And to transfer or give any rights to things, you sign it with that title key. And in order to prove it, you just present that this chain of signatures is intact. And you don't actually need a blockchain for that. You just apply the cryptography to it. And then you don't have all these ridiculous overheads of cram everything in the blockchain, but it accomplishes the same effective thing in terms of security and the integrity of the records.
It'd be funny because somebody would like prove it, and you would go through all the proofs, and you would literally prove it, and it'd be like, ha ha ha.
I actually kind of like
the blockchain. You need a Git repo.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, you need
the colored coin idea, I think, is still pretty sound. And I think you could do it without a blockchain, but I think you get some benefits from doing it on a blockchain. Certificate authorities or that first guy to start can get compromised, and that can get dicey. So I think it's a good idea. I think it's silly that Jeb Bush is trying to tweet it out, but whatever. I mean, these guys, they gotta try to capitalize on anything intelligent that somebody else says, because it's not coming out of that. It's not coming out of that melon. But that aside, I think we will see stuff like that. I think it's a cool idea. I even think that the crazy stuff like having a colored coin on the blockchain that gives you rights to turn on your car. I think even those things they're goofy, and they'll probably be a little bit different than we envision them. But I think digital rights on a blockchain is a good idea. We're just years away from it, right? Like, let's not get so confused about this that we think that is going to happen before we have a global digital money. I think that's going to happen first, and that's going to solve 90% of all these other problems as well. And what's left, some of that will be blockchain solution related stuff. And by blockchain, good God, I am so sorry that I said blockchain. Bitcoin.
I was wondering. I like sat back down. I'm hearing you talk about how great this blockchain idea is. It makes
I don't think that Bitcoin is going to work out in the long run, but I do think that blockchain technology is going to be really exciting. So let me just go ahead and be the millionth fucking complete retard to say that and act like I have a clue.
Guys, the real future is distributed ledgers. What is wrong with you?
Distributed ledgers.
It's so painful that when you talk to enough stupid people, you do pick up the vocabulary.
And it's painful too, because you can't just be like, you're stupid. You got to figure out how to communicate in the stupid nomenclature. You got to translate into the stupid.
Oh, good. It happens.
Yeah, it's like another language.
Smart contracts.
You have to translate from dumb to smart in your head and back again like it's Spanish.
Let me write my argument into a smart contract that doesn't work so you can understand.
Is that as good as a special drawing, right?
All right. So who's ready for another story which involves wild speculation? Is everybody ready?
You know it.
Why is this weird company that's interested in Ethereum smart contracts buying a giant stretch in an industrial factory in Nevada? 67,000 acres, $175 million.
I think it's the ICOX innovations because they're registered in Nevada. That's my speculation. It's actually KodakCoin.
Have you ever seen Cube 2 Hypercube? Not Cube 1. They're going to build a Cube 2 Hypercube in that area. That's definitely what they're going to do.
I think they're going there because of all the golf courses and prostitutes and gambling, right? That's why.
Well, I mean, like one of the big theories.
No, listen, I know what it is. I got some inside info. Vitalik finally raised enough money to do his original project. He's going to simulate a quantum computer, but you need a lot of.
Well, I mean, on a somewhat serious level, one of the theories I saw was pretty much trying to set up a solar mining farm. But I mean, if you look at this company, Blockchains LLC, it says on their site one of their focuses is software development for dApps and Ethereum. So I mean, it doesn't really it wouldn't really make sense for this company to be trying to develop a Bitcoin mining operation, and it would make even less sense for an Ethereum mining operation when you have Vitalik running around memeing about proof of stake coming soon. So I mean, it's like, what are they trying to build blockchain city in the middle of Nevada and put everything on the Ethereum blockchain?
Oh man, I like the solar mining speculation, just because that's something like I'm kind of interested in. Is like I'm interested in maybe like the value proposition of Bitcoin being used with renewable energies to try and just make those as efficient as possible. And I mean, I'm not quite sure what they're doing there, but yeah, I mean, that'd be pretty cool. I mean, not very cool. It's all on Ethereum or whatever, but hey, that's cool. I'll still do the solar Bitcoin mining or something.
Well, I think it's going to be interesting when we get to the point where both there's a specific time horizon that Bitcoin miners are using, wherein no Bitcoin miners are liquidating on short horizons. Everybody that's engaged in Bitcoin mining knows the average time preference over certain horizons, and they're all doing that. That'll be good for the natural rates of interest and stuff like that. It'll be a strong market signal. Other than that, what'll also be a strong market signal and a good thing is when energy companies know that their excess energy can be used to mine Bitcoin, and they can convert that energy into something that's much easier to store and to secure. That will also be interesting. The reason that that's not happening a lot more right now than it is because there's lots of regulatory capture and special relationships between energy companies and the state and the government, and mandatory buybacks and mandatory scarcity things and stuff like that. Once we start to get that stuff out of the way and have more market control over this different shit, it's going to be really, really interesting, because we're going to have really, 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 really strong brick shithouse market signals. They're going to help inform other areas of the economy to become anti-fragile, just like Bitcoin is. So if it has anything to do with that entire process, that would be pretty fucking awesome. And if not, I don't know. It's probably going to be some type of, some type of scam.
Ethereum City.
Ethereum City, Solar City done Ethereum style. So,
yeah, I really like that proposition of like this renewable energy is not, that's excess energy is not just being plugged back into the grid, and like it's actually going to secure value, and you can retain that for a while. And I mean, like I feel like eventually it will get to this level, like you're saying, to where it'll kind of even out. But I don't know. It's like, it is kind of like a years down the road thing. But hey, if these are the first steps in getting these things done, like, let's do it. But the whole like Ethereum jazz about it, like we're saying, sounds like Scam City. But hey, good idea built on it, Scam City.
Well, not to kill the mood or anything, but I recently read a story about how because of the amount of radiation that is still in the area, because, all the nuclear testing that the US used to do, or still maybe doing, who knows, in the desert, the number of people in the US who have died as a result of that radiation is actually higher than the number of people who died due to the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombs, which is pretty sad. So maybe, I don't know, they can use the excess radiation for mining or something.
Serial, more people died from the radiation in Nevada than died in Hiroshima?
Yeah, as a result of yeah.
All right,
wow.
I'm going to be very on PC right now. Cancer treatments on the Ethereum blockchain.
That's it. It's a cancer treatment center on Ethereum.
They're going to do that. They're going to make some kind of token for cancer.
Proof of tumor.
I think the statistic is all the people that have ever gotten sick because of the fallout and the ionizing radiation in Nevada versus the people that were injured in the initial blast. Is where
okay, yeah.
Okay, I can buy that.
Yeah,
that's still a huge amount of people. That's really sad.
Definitely. Yeah, it's a huge amount of people to harm. I mean, any company or any individual would be hard pressed to be able to hurt that many people. It would be all but impossible. But you get the state involved. I mean, they get that shit done.
Right. Pump that ground full
I can't help but make one history reference since we're talking about Hiroshima. If you do a Google search and you look for images, you'll see the blast area, you'll see the military installations. And one thing that's absolutely undeniable is we targeted the civilian population and intentionally avoided the military installation. You might argue because we wanted to actually take it and use it, but either way, we were working for maximum innocent civilian casualties.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Good job, government.
That's it's definitely upsetting whenever, like, you know, I don't know, those are the things where it's like whenever people ask why in Bitcoin, it's like, because there's people out there dying because this market is the way it is, and maybe we can do something to it, adjust that.
Oh, definitely. I mean, one of the reasons that I'm devoted to Bitcoin instead of just ambitious in general is because, you know, the weaponized agorism that Bitcoin represents is something that's extremely useful and important, especially if you live in the West and, you know, hopefully want the military to come home and stay here and be a defense force instead of an aggressive occupying force for empire.
Well, then maybe you can stop playing with yourself so much and jump on the show once in a while.
I can't do that, man. I got, you know, to play with myself.
No. That was eloquent, man. I really play around in there.
Well, you never know. I mean, it might be, you know, we might have a situation with what happened with the U.S. military all over the world in the last week where, you know, a bunch of idiots wearing Fitbits basically exposed the locations of all the bases we weren't supposed to know about. So maybe this company will have some idiot at it who will wear a Fitbit and he'll be running laps. Get it? Lightning apps. He'll be running laps around. He'll be running laps around the company base, and then we'll know who. Then we'll know who it is.
You just coined the first lightning apps term, laps. I haven't heard that yet.
Oh, I definitely didn't make it. No, that's
okay.
been a thing. I saw it yesterday. I was like, oh, that's funny, so I'll use it.
Okay. Well, yeah.
Yeah, that was just, it's like the most ridiculous OPSEC fail I have ever seen in my life.
Well, I'm engorged to the point of pain, so I got to go play with myself, as is the normal reason that I'm not here. So I bid you all a good evening.
I am shamed. I am shamed.
Well, we need to put like an adult content warning on the show.
Yeah.
No, I think he's talking about breastfeeding his baby, so it's completely PG.
Yeah.
All right, so
trying to transition out of that one, Shinobi.
Tether, stuff, subpoena, bad. Oh wait, it's like 2 months old, and they've still been issuing tethers sent subpoenaed by the CFTC. That means that the whole company is going to implode, right? That they're just blatantly like completely ignoring the CFTC and printing non-existent money out of thin air, despite the fact they were subpoenaed, right? That's the logical conclusion, guys, right?
Yeah. I want to quote something from Bloomberg because they put it really perfectly as to why this was such a blah from journalism. So the fact that the subpoena was from December and not in the last week, that means that Bitfinex has issued Tether under the eye of the CFTC since then, which in important ways suggests the coin is indeed backed by USD. It will be interesting to see what happens next given the increased scrutiny. If Bitfinex has been issuing Tether not sufficiently backed by USD, despite being under CFTC monitoring, it'll be one of the most brazen acts we've seen from an exchange in the space. I thought that was just perfect because this FUD kind of really backfired in that sense because it exposed the existence of a subpoena that if it happened, that means that Tether has been issuing Tether despite the subpoena, which means the subpoena was either not about Tether or insolvency or any of that. Or Bitfinex/Tether is being, let's say, really brave. But I highly doubt that for a number of reasons.
I think what they did with eGold is they I mean, I'm surprised it's not like a gag warrant sort of situation. I'm surprised they can confirm that they have been subpoenaed if this is what's happening. But with eGold, they just told them you can't say anything, continue to run your operation. We're just gonna monitor and watch everything that you do until we decide to put you in jail. So that would have been my initial thought, but like I said, they usually make you stay quiet in that situation.
I mean, you know, like Bitfinex is not perfect or completely squeaky clean. I mean, there's not really any business in this space that is, but like just the idea that this FUD is still steamrolling forward without any kind of logical assessment of the situation, like it makes my head hurt. Like it really does. Like the idea that they're just printing money out of thin air and then continuing to do so after the CFTC starts crawling up their ass is like, okay, well, your argument is pretty much that every single person at that business is clinically insane or has like, as I don't know, the KGB behind their back or something. I mean, it's like, it's insane. Like there is no way an even slightly rational person would do that.
Yeah, it's certainly one of those long-standing stories that just keeps coming back around, where it's like, where is like something significant to show us that this is actually happening, and that never comes up, and it is interesting to think about like what they got issued the subpoena 2 months ago, and like is it possible that the CFTC is monitoring it, and they're just monitoring it because I don't know. It's like they don't want to stifle growth or something like that. But either which way, like it's one of those stories that I don't know. It's like I wish it wouldn't pop back up until there was something real relevant about it. But I don't know. It seems like every week or two we'll hear something about it, and it's like just a different wording of the same thing.
Yeah, and I also want to point out the fact that they got subpoenaed should not be a surprise to anyone, because guys, Bitfinex is part of the Blockchain Alliance. They have a data sharing agreement. I have no doubt they have some kind of data sharing agreement with law enforcement. That is kind of part of being within the Blockchain Alliance. If that scares, if you've only just realized that you're holding money in an exchange that can be subpoenaed and shut down, you shouldn't be holding your money there. It's that simple. If a subpoena scares you, you would not even believe what the other exchanges are dealing with. Okay, all of these people that are in the Blockchain Alliance. Okay, if that scares you, then that's your clue to get out. Not because of Tether, not because of this weird Omni blockchain coin. It's because you're using a centralized exchange that does have relationships with law enforcement. Any exchange that is on the Blockchain Alliance list does. So a subpoena should not surprise you.
Yeah, absolutely. If you don't want your name to be in a database that's going to be hacked in 6 years when it's actually a whole lot of money, even if it's not a lot of money right now, and you don't want like every criminal organization in the world to have a copy of that database and your social security number, your home address, all that stuff that you have to give when you set up an exchange, don't use those exchanges at all. Don't even use them to temporarily buy, because even though you're not going to have your money stolen from the exchange, that data is going to be out there for a long time, and it's going to be far worse than anything that Equifax did, or any other data breaches are going to seem completely irrelevant compared to the hit list that's going to be leaked on a bunch of people that made money in Bitcoin. So I would definitely recommend you use something like Bisq. It's a little bit of a pain in the butt, but you may not have a bad guy knocking on your door when you finally have a lot of money.
Yep.
And I mean, yeah, it's like if you don't hold your keys, you're exposed to risk. And I mean, it's That's no matter how many times you hear that, if you're not getting it yet, you need to let it sink in, because that is one of the axioms of this space. If you don't have control of the keys, then things can happen. And I mean, it's that simple. All right.
And
so
no,
who's ready?
The birds, the birds are not related. I don't know how many times I have to say it. The birds are not related. Thank you.
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
The canary in Chrysalis's Twitter was in reference to a non-disclosure agreement, not a warrant, not a subpoena. It was not related to anything going on right now. So for those who keep crawling all over social media, demanding explanations from Chris, he's not relevant to what's going on right now. And despite the time lapses, like those birds have nothing to do with this. So please, like, stop encouraging the nonsensical fun.
And that's the whole point of a canary anyway, right? Is that people can do something where maybe they won't have the boot of the state on their neck. And I'm not saying that's what happened here, but this is just an absurd situation if people are pushing hard for an explanation as to why a canary moved, because that's the whole point of a canary, is that that's all you get.
Yep. So, guys, want to move along to the last and funniest story?
Yeah, let's do it.
Bcash roadmap. This is just all some nice look at us with the few companies and projects insane enough to be a part of this. And another hard fork coming. Once they get to a median timestamp of May 15th this year, they're going to schedule a hard fork 6 months later and throw some of the things in this laundry list in. Reactivate some old opcodes. This is going to be funny. This is going to be the funniest thing that has ever happened with Bitcoin Cash, because there is a reason the opcodes disabled and removed from Bitcoin were disabled and removed. They were broken.
But Shinobi, I mean, they have to make up for the fact that they can't really do Lightning Network. So they just have, that's their solution. That's my guess.
And fixing the difficulty adjustment algorithm yet again, because they screwed it up the second time too. This is going to be interesting. Introducing a canonical transaction order, I'm assuming based on the transaction ID. And this is going to be kind of interesting because that requires altering the consensus rules regarding transaction ordering, which things like child pays for parent counts on. So they're either going to have to break child pays for parent randomly, because they won't be able to know until everything's actually generated transaction-wise whether the second transaction will come after the first one, because if it doesn't under current consensus rules, the block is invalid. This was actually, we've actually seen this happen before. I'm 99% positive due to ASIC boost shuffling transactions around as they're grinding the Merkle root, or adding a lot more complexity into that to account for things like child pays for parent. So that will also be pretty funny to see how they handle it. And increase the default block size limit, because I mean, hey guys, it's not already at the point where if people actually start using it, it's going to be heavily centralized. Let's make it even more centralized.
Is it going to be terabyte blocks? Are we going to get the really big blocks?
First, they have to figure out how to pretty much spy on everybody and use transaction data to target ads properly, so they can afford to run nodes that big. But yeah, I think we'll get to that, Jimmy.
But I mean, you know, once you make blocks that big, won't Bitcoin Cash blocks effectively be empty? I mean, they're already so tiny. Like, it's just all this empty space, all this potential.
I think that will just it'll make it even funnier if they just raise the block size again and nobody continues using it. So we'll just have bigger empty blocks.
Yeah, let's double the size of the restaurant that is already empty, right? Like nobody's showing up for dinner. Let's add more rooms. Let's make a bigger dining room.
Yeah, because I don't know if anyone's noticed. I haven't checked it in any block explorers recently, but when I checked back in November and December, there were only, I think, 14 blocks that were even above 4 megabytes. It was pretty low. And that was out of like 28 to 30,000 blocks that they've mined since the fork. It was like not even 1% of blocks is over 4 megabytes. Pretty sad.
And I mean, how many people think that there's somebody walking around that's like buying stuff with Bitcoin Cash right now? Like those transactions are obviously just there to prop up the price so that so the pump and dump can work. These are not. This is not a used network.
Well, JW, they got some rock stars, dude. Man, they're freaking loaded with people over there. I guess sock puppets, rock stars.
Yeah, I mean, you can buy good advertising, you can buy good PR. And you can spend a little bit of money to throw fake transactions in the blockchain. But if you've been in the space for more than a few months and you can't tell that this is just orchestrated scam, then I've done my best. You know, go with God.
Yeah, I don't know. It's funny. Like, yeah, you say that. It's like, I don't know. Been in long enough to where as soon as you pull up a website and you see these moving graphics behind it, and like just trying to show you how, you know, cutting edge we are because we have moving graphics on our website. It's like, all right, what are you selling? And of course, Bcash. Yeah, it's just arbitrary decisions. I mean, it's like centralized as it is. It just shows you, like, I mean, how hard is it to fork something on Bitcoin Cash? Like, there it is. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
I have a proposal.
Open source projects have a certain aesthetic to them, and Silicon Valley schemes have a certain aesthetic to them. So pick the one that you want to invest in, even if you're not technical.
So my proposal is that every time Bitcoin Cash wants to do a block size increase, they should add a 50-pound weight extra to CSW's weightlifting equipment.
I'm still waiting for them to remove the dust limit. I mean, I need a place to store all my TV shows and movies and stuff. I'm running out of
I just want CSW to get stuck in the gym under a really heavy weight and be like, help. Can't lift these blocks.
And I think there is a meme coming later.
I think it's the opposite. I think the higher the Bitcoin Cash price, the bigger the Dunlap gets. The closer to the ground it grows.
Yep. It's...
Oh, Shinobi's looking for a meme.
Oh no, I'm going to make a meme after we're done with the show.
Oh, right.
That is a perfect meme.
Actually, no, I have a much better incentive. So instead of adding weights, he should only be able to lift some equivalent pounds based on how many transactions are actually in the blocks. So if it's like it's like if it's like the block space is underutilized, that means he has to like shrink his weights, and then he'll never work out.
It's like that video game
because he wants to work.
That's moving with the price of Bitcoin and difficulty. He's gotta change his weight limit with the block size. Okay, yeah.
10 pounds per megabyte.
And he can just use all those fake degrees that he got from mail order school as weights, because I'm sure those weigh something. It requires a wheelbarrow to move them around, so apparently those fake pieces of paper are on some heavy stock.
All right. Who's got some non-jokey last thoughts to round us off for the day?
Final thought. If you're in Colorado, you're in the Boulder area, there's a Boulder Valley Bitcoin meetup tonight. Try and make it. It's it's trying to build the community still here, and you know, it's going to be a pretty interesting presentation, and be giving away an open dime at the end. So come on if you're in the area, check it out.
Yeah, Rick's been working real hard on getting that meetup off the ground in Boulder, and he's been doing a damn good job with it. So yeah, anybody local to the area, go check the shit out, because from what I hear, the meetup scene over there isn't really the highest quality.
We're changing it.
So my parting thought is look me up on Twitter, Weatherman I am, and go to my profile page and check out that spreadsheet that I have that is trying to be as objective as possible about the top 10 cryptocurrencies and kind of what they claim and what they actually have as far as technical capabilities. And I'm going to keep plugging that every time one of the crap coiners or they hoard around me and hassle me. So there you go. There's my plug for today.
And my thought is that right before the show, I published a second version of Troll Journalism documentation, which I was originally planning to release last year, just never got around to it because I had a lot of work. But it's still kind of exploring the concepts and some of the tools that I'm planning to use and people I'm going to work with. So if you have any comments or suggestions, or you're interested in participating in that, let me know.
It's
worth looking at. It's brilliant.
Yeah, this is something that needs to be pushed a lot more on journalists as a model of actually producing, you know, their content and actually holding them accountable, and not just something to act as a control, so you can see the steps and the information and sources they use to actually arrive at whatever they publish, to hold them accountable, instead of just the kind of opinion piece propaganda bullshit that the news has been warped into over the past 10 or 20 years. I mean, not that it was even that good before that, but yes, this is definitely something everybody should check out, and I'll be tossing in the show notes after we hop off the air. And I guess my last thought is, don't panic, everybody. Okay? Don't panic. The price is just the price. And if we do slide into a bear market, look at it this way. It's going to put Bitfury through hell with all the crap that they've been fucking scamming into lately. And it might even do some damage for Jihan. So always look at the silver lining. And I guess if you guys enjoyed, you can like and subscribe. If not, don't. I will see you all later.
Later, everyone.